They still talk about that afternoon, not because of the game, but because of him.
but
From the
because of him.
sidelines, you could see the boy
From the
moving like the
sidelines,
wind had
you could
chosen
see
him.
the boy
It was
moving like the
recess,
wind
the
had
kind of
chosen
golden
him.
autumn day where
It was
every shout and
recess,
laugh
the
seemed to
kind
hang
of golden
in the air.
autumn day where
The
every
crowd of
shout
kids
and laugh
wasn't just
seemed to
chasing.
hang in the
They
air.
were chasing him,
The
and he
crowd
was
of
already
kids wasn't
gone.
just
His
chasing.
sneakers scraped
They were
against the
chasing
blacktop,
him.
gusts
And he was
lifting the edge
already
of his
gone.
shirt like sails.
His sneakers
One of the
scraped
older
against
boys
the
nudged his
blacktop,
friend and said it
gusts
casually,
lifting
almost
the edge of his
carelessly.
shirt like
He should
sails.
play football.
One of the older
That
boys
offhand
nudged
remark
his
hit
friend
harder than
and
anyone
said
knew.
it casually,
It wasn't just a
almost
suggestion.
carelessly.
It was a mark,
He should
a
play
label,
football.
an unspoken
That
invitation
offhand
to a
remark
different kind
hit
of life.
harder than anyone knew.
He didn't end up at
It
wide
wasn't
receiver
just a
by
suggestion.
accident.
It
Maybe
was a
it was
mark,
the memory of
a
watching
label,
a college
an
highlight reel late one
unspoken
night.
invitation
A
to a
lone
different
receiver
kind of
streaking
life.
down the sideline
He
under
didn't
stadium
end up
lights.
at
Maybe
wide
it was the way
receiver by
freedom
accident.
felt when no one could catch
Maybe
him.
it was the
He
memory
didn't
of
want to be
watching
in
a
the
college
pile.
highlight
He
reel
wanted to
late
dance
one
along
night.
the edges,
A
where
lone
space
receiver
and speed
streaking
could
down
make
the
magic.
sideline under
But
stadium
magic
lights.
rarely works the first time
Maybe
you
it
try
was
it.
the way freedom
His
felt
first
when no
scrimmage
one
was
could
a
catch
mess.
him.
Hands out of
He
sync
didn't
with
want
the
to
ball,
be in the
steps
pile.
breaking too
He
soon,
wanted to
a
dance
clumsy
along the
collision with a
edges,
teammate.
where space and
It would have
speed
been
could
easy
make
to laugh
magic.
it off and walk away.
But magic
Instead,
rarely
he
works
went
the
home
first
that day
time you
with the
try
quiet
it.
burn of someone
His
who
first
tasted
scrimmage was a
failure
mess.
and decided it
Hands
wasn't
out
the
of sync
final
with the
word.
ball,
By
steps
the next
breaking
week,
too
he
soon,
was back on
a
the
clumsy
field,
collision with a
chasing that
teammate.
fleeting moment when the
It
air
would have been
felt
easy
thin
to laugh
and the
it off
ground
and walk
seemed to
away.
disappear under his
Instead,
feet.
he went
And
home
that's
that
where the
day
story
with the quiet
turns,
burn
from
of
the
someone
thrill
who
of being
tasted
chosen
failure
to the
and
grind of
decided
learning
it wasn't
what
the
that
final
choice
word.
really means.
By the next week,
The
he
crowd
was
didn't
back on the
remember
field,
the heat that day,
chasing
but the
that
lineman
fleeting
standing
moment
next to him
when the
did.
air felt
From
thin
the sideline,
and the ground
he
seemed
could
to
see the rookie
disappear under
shirt
his
clinging
feet.
to his back,
And that's where
sweat
the
running
story
into
turns,
his eyes until
from
he
the thrill
squinted
of
like a
being
man
chosen
staring
to
into
the
the
grind
sun.
of learning what that
Every
choice
drill was
really
a test of
means.
patience. Slants cut a hair
The crowd
too
didn't
early,
remember the
curls
heat that
rounded
day,
when they should have been
but the
sharp.
lineman standing next to
The
him
coach's
did.
whistle was merciless,
From the sideline,
slicing the air,
he could see the
dragging him
rookie's
back to the
shirt
starting
clinging to
cone
his
again
back,
and again.
sweat running into
There
his
was
eyes
one practice
until he
everyone talked
squinted like
about
a man
afterward.
staring into the
The
sun.
coach stopped him
Every
mid-route,
drill
walked
was a
over,
test of
and
patience.
literally moved his feet
Slants
into
cut
the
a hair
correct
too
position,
early,
like a dance
curls rounded
instructor
when they
adjusting
should
a
have been
clumsy
sharp.
student. It was
The
humiliating.
coach's whistle was
Until
merciless,
it started working.
slicing the air,
Fast forward to a
dragging
Friday
him back
night
to
under
the starting
stadium
cone
lights.
again and
The
again.
game was tight, the air sharp
was
with
one
that autumn
practice
chill
everyone
that
talked
makes
about
breath look
afterward.
like smoke.
The
He
coach
broke off
stopped
the
him
line, the ball
mid-route,
spinning through
walked
the
over,
glare,
and
for a
literally
split
moved his
second
feet
it felt
into
like
the
it was
correct
hanging in the
position,
sky just
like a
for
dance
him.
instructor
When leather hit his
adjusting a
palms,
clumsy
the
student.
sound of the crowd swelled,
It was
a
humiliating
low hum
until
turning
it
into
started
a roar.
working.
In that
Fast
heartbeat,
forward to
every
a Friday
failure
night under
flashed through his
stadium
mind.
lights. The
Slips
game
in
was
the
tight,
turf,
the air
drops in
sharp with
practice,
that autumn
cuts
chill
that fooled
that makes
no one.
breath look like smoke.
And then they were gone,
He broke off the
erased
line,
by the
the
weight
ball
of the ball in
spinning
his
through the
hands
glare,
and the pounding
and
of
for a
his heart.
split second, it felt like it
wasn't
was
just a
hanging in the
catch, it was
sky just
proof.
for him.
He jogged back to the huddle
When
without
leather
smiling,
hit his palms,
but anyone looking
the
close
sound
enough
of the
could see
crowd
it.
swelled,
The quiet
a
fire
low
of someone
hum
who knew
turning
he'd
into
just
a
taken
roar.
his first real step.
In that
And from there,
heartbeat,
the lessons
every
only
failure
got harder,
flashed through
because
his
being
mind.
good at your craft didn't mean the
Slips in
ball
the
would
turf,
find you.
drops in
Yeah,
practice,
from the press box, you could
cuts
see the
that
pattern
fooled
long
no
before
one.
the scoreboard told
And
the
then
story.
they were gone,
Route
erased
after
by the
route,
weight of
the
the
kid
ball
in
in his
number
hands
14
and the
burned his
pounding of his
defender
heart.
and disappeared into empty
It wasn't
space,
just a catch,
only for the
it was
ball to
proof.
sail somewhere else.
He jogged
By
back to the
halftime,
huddle
he'd
without
sprinted
smiling,
more than any
but
player on
anyone
the
looking
field,
close
yet
enough
hadn't
could
touched
see
the
it.
ball once.
The
It was
quiet
one of those
fire of
games where
someone
he
who
was a
knew
ghost
he'd
in
just
plain
taken
sight.
his first
When he
real
ran
step.
as a decoy, his form was
And from
perfect.
there,
Shoulders
the
low,
lessons
strides
only got
clean,
harder,
head snapping to sell
because
the
being
fake.
good at your
But
craft
there was
didn't
no
mean
roar
the
from
ball
the
would find
stands,
you.
no replay on the big screen.
From the press box,
When he actually
you could
did
see
get
the
a target,
pattern
it
long
was as if
before
the
the
stadium
scoreboard
woke
told
up
the
for a
story.
moment. The difference in
Route
energy
after
was like
route,
watching
the
lightning
kid in
strike
number
versus
14
watching the
burned his
clouds
defender
drift by.
and
The
disappeared
hidden
into empty
stats told a
space,
different story.
only for the ball
22
to sail
precise
somewhere
routes,
else.
9 clean blocks on
By
corners,
halftime,
3 key
he'd sprinted
seals
more
that
than
sprung
any
a
player player
running
on the
back for
field,
first downs,
yet hadn't touched
numbers
the
that
ball
never
once.
appeared on the scoreboard or
It was
in
one of
Monday's
those
newspaper.
games where he was a
Somewhere
ghost in
between
plain
the third and
sight.
fourth quarter,
When
lining
he
up for
ran as
yet
a
another
decoy,
sprint,
his
a
form was
thought flickered
perfect.
across his mind.
Shoulders low,
Am I
strides
just
clean,
burning fuel
head
for nothing?
snapping to sell the fake.
But before the
But
question
there was
had
no
time to
roar
stick,
from the stands,
the whistle blew.
no replay
He
on the
set
big
his
screen.
hands, dug his cleats
When
into
he
the
actually
turf,
did
and
get a
launched
target,
forward again.
it was as
Because
if
a
the
wide
stadium
receiver
woke up
doesn't
for a
get to
moment.
choose when the ball comes,
The difference in
only whether
energy
they're
was
ready
like
when
watching
it does.
lightning strike
And
versus
soon,
watching the
under
clouds
brighter
drift
lights
by.
and bigger crowds,
The
he'd
hidden
learned that
stats
readiness
told a different
alone
story.
wasn't always enough.
22 precise routes,
The
9
highlight
clean
reel
blocks
from
on
that
corners,
night told a neat
3
story.
key seals
Spiral
that sprung a
passes
running
cutting through
back
the
for
air,
first
the
downs.
quarterback celebrating under
Numbers
the
that
lights,
never
the
appeared
headline
on
in
the
Monday's
scoreboard
school
or
paper,
in Monday's
hero
newspaper.
of the game.
Somewhere between
What
the
it
third
didn't
and
show was
fourth
the
quarter,
ball sailing
lining
5
up for
feet
yet
over the
another
receiver's
sprint.
outstretched
A
hands
thought
in the
flickered
third
across
quarter,
his
or
mind.
the way the wind was suddenly
Am I
blamed
just
instead
burning
of the
fuel
throw.
for nothing?
From the stands,
But
you could
before
see
the
the
question
imbalance
had
as
time to
clearly as
stick,
the scoreboard.
the whistle blew.
When the quarterback missed,
He set
it
his
was
hands,
bad conditions
dug his
or
cleats into the
timing
turf,
issues.
and
When a
launched
receiver
forward
dropped
again.
a pass, just one,
Because
it
a
was
wide
lack of
receiver
focus
doesn't
or
get to
not
choose
hungry
when the
enough.
ball comes,
And in that locker
only
room
whether
after the
they're
game,
ready
the difference
when it
felt
does.
even sharper. He
And
sat on the
soon,
bench,
under
jersey
brighter
clinging
lights
with
and bigger
sweat,
crowds,
cleats still
he'd
biting
learned
at his
that
heels.
readiness alone
His roots
wasn't
had been
always
crisp.
enough.
His blocks had sprung 2 touchdowns
The
for
highlight reel
teammates,
from that
but
night
there was no
told
pat
a
on the
neat
back,
story.
no mention of his name.
Spiral passes
The
cutting
room
through
hummed
the
with
air,
laughter,
the
music
quarterback
from someone's
celebrating
speaker
under the
bouncing
lights,
off the tile
the headline
walls.
in Monday's
He
school
unlaced
paper,
his shoes in silence.
hero of the
The
game.
next morning, before the sun had burned
What
the
it
mist
didn't
off the
show was the
practice
ball
field, he
sailing
was already
5
there,
feet over the
running
receiver's
routes into the
outstretched
empty air,
hands in the
catching
third
balls
quarter,
from a backup
or the way
QB
the
just to
wind
keep his
was
hands
suddenly
sharp.
blamed instead
He
of the
didn't talk
throw.
about the injustice.
From the
He didn't
stands,
post about
you
it
could see
online,
the imbalance
but he
as
saw the
clearly as
school's
the
social
scoreboard.
feed, the
When
filtered
the
photos
quarterback
of the
missed,
quarterback
it was bad
mid-celebration,
conditions
the
or
comment
timing
threads
issues.
calling him unstoppable.
When a receiver dropped
He
a pass,
saved the image,
just one,
not to admire it,
it
but
was
to
lack
remember.
of focus,
One day
or
he'd make sure the
not
next
hungry
headline
enough.
had more than one face.
And in that locker room
But
after
soon,
the game,
he'd find out
the
that
difference
college
felt
ball
even
didn't just
sharper.
have favoritism.
He sat
It
on
had
the
a
bench,
hierarchy
jersey
built into
clinging with
every
sweat,
rep, every
cleats
depth
still
chart,
biting at his
every
heels.
unspoken rule.
His routes had been
It's the
crisp.
third quarter
His
of a
blocks had
mid-season
sprung
home
2
game when it
touchdowns for
happens.
teammates,
From the press
but there
box,
was
you
no
can see
pat on the
number
back,
83
no
break
mention
clean.
of his name.
2 steps past the
The
corner,
room
the
hummed with
safety late
laughter,
to rotate.
music from
He's
someone's
open by
speaker
a mile.
bouncing off the
The
tile
ball leaves
walls.
the quarterback's hand,
He
the
unlaced
arc
his
perfect,
shoes in silence.
until it isn't.
The next morning,
It sails
before
just
the
beyond
sun
his
had
reach,
burned the mist
grazing the
off the
tips of his
practice
fingers
field,
before
he was
vanishing
already
into the
there,
sideline.
running
The
routes
crowd
into the
groans,
empty
but
air,
only for a
catching
moment.
balls from a
The play
backup
is gone.
QB just
The
to keep his
cameras
hands
cut back
sharp.
to the huddle.
He
That
didn't
was
talk
his
about
shot.
the injustice.
The one he'd been running
He didn't
toward all
post about it
season,
online.
and now it's just
But
another
he saw
line
the
on the
school's
stat
social
sheet.
feed,
Incomplete
the filtered
pass.
photos of the quarterback
Back in August,
mid-celebration,
his first day in the
the
college
comment
locker room
threads
felt
calling
like
him
stepping into another
unstoppable.
planet. The
He
upperclassmen
saved the
weren't
image,
just bigger,
not
they
to
owned
admire
the
it,
space.
but to
Their
remember.
laughter filled the air.
One
Their
day,
jerseys hung
he'd
like
make sure
banners
the
of
next
past
headline
campaigns.
had more than
He
one
was the new
face.
kid, quiet
But
in the
soon,
corner,
he'd
scanning
find
for a
out
place
that
to
college
belong.
ball didn't
He was
just have
assigned to the scout
favoritism.
team, a
It
shadow
had a
army
hierarchy
tasked with
built
imitating
into
next
every
week's
rep,
opponent.
every depth chart,
Every practice meant
every
running routes for a
unspoken rule.
quarterback who
It's
wouldn't
the
throw to
third
him on
quarter of a
Saturday,
mid-season
catching
home
passes
game when
that
it
didn't
happens.
count, and
From
perfecting
the press
plays
box,
no one
you
outside
can
the
see an
field would ever
83
see.
break clean.
On game day,
2 steps
helmet
past the
strapped,
corner,
cleats ready,
the safety
he
late to
stood on the
rotate.
sideline like a soldier
He's
waiting
open
for
by
a
a
war
mile.
he'd never be
The
called
ball
into.
leaves the quarterback's
That
hand,
overthrow
the
in
arc
the third
perfect.
quarter?
Until
It was the
isn't.
first time all year his
It
number had
sails
been
just
called,
beyond
and as
his
he jogged
reach,
back to the bench,
grazing the
face
tips of
calm,
his fingers
lungs burning,
before
a
vanishing
single
into the
thought lodged in
sideline.
his head.
The
What
crowd
if that was
groans,
the only
but only
one
for a
I'll ever
moment.
get?
The play is
He
gone.
tried to bury it,
The cameras
tried to
cut
believe
back to the
patience
huddle.
would be enough.
That was his
So the
shot.
next morning, before
one he'd
sunrise,
been
he
running
was on the
toward
field
all
again,
season.
cutting, sprinting,
And
catching
now it's
passes
just
from
another
whoever would
line
throw.
on the stat
He
sheet.
told himself the opportunity
Incomplete
would come
pass.
back around. But in the
Back
back of
in
his
August,
mind, he knew the
his
truth.
first day in the
this
college
game,
locker
there are
room
no guarantees,
felt like stepping
only
into
moments.
another planet.
And in the pros,
The
he'd soon
upperclassmen
learn,
weren't
even
just
those
bigger,
moments could be
they
stolen
owned the
before you
space.
ever saw them coming.
Their laughter filled the air.
The cameras
Their
caught him
jerseys
under
hung
the
like
stadium
banners of
lights,
past
visor
campaigns.
gleaming, shoulders
He was the
squared,
new kid,
the crowd
quiet
a
in the
living
corner,
wall of noise
scanning
behind
for a
him.
place to
It
belong.
looked cinematic,
He was
like a
assigned
hero's
to the scout
entrance.
team, a shadow
What the
army
cameras didn't
tasked
show
with
was the
imitating
way
next
his
week's
pulse hammered.
opponent.
How every
Every
step toward the
practice
line of
meant running
scrimmage
routes
felt
for a
like walking
quarterback
into a
who wouldn't
courtroom
throw to him
where
on Saturday,
every movement would be
catching
recorded,
passes that didn't
replayed,
count,
and judged.
and perfecting plays
That
no
night,
one outside the
he spent
field
an
would
entire
ever see.
quarter as a ghost. Not one
On
target,
game
not
day,
even a glance from the
helmet
quarterback.
strapped,
Still,
cleats ready,
every snap was
he
full
stood on the
speed.
sideline
Routes run
like a
sharp enough
soldier
to
waiting
slice the
for a
turf.
war he'd
Blocks
never be
thrown
called
with just
into.
enough force to spring a
That
teammate.
overthrow in the third
Because
quarter,
in the pros, one
it
lazy
was the
step
first
can
time
cost you
all
your
year
job.
his number had
The
been
contract
called.
on paper looked
And
impressive,
as he jogged
but
back
buried
to
in
the
the fine
bench,
print was the
face
truth.
calm, lungs
His paycheck
burning,
was
a
chained to
single
numbers,
thought lodged in his
receptions,
head.
yards,
What
touchdowns.
if that was the only
Numbers
one
that
I'll
depended
ever
on someone
get?
else deciding he mattered
He tried
that
to
play.
bury it.
A game
tried to
without
believe
targets wasn't
patience
just
would
a
be
quiet
enough.
night.
So
It
the
was a
next
financial
morning,
hit.
before sunrise,
And when the
he
networks
was on
rolled
the
the
field
highlights,
again,
they told
cutting,
the same old
sprinting,
story.
catching
The
passes from
quarterback's
whoever would
40-yard
throw.
dime, the running
He
back's
told
breakaway
himself
run,
the opportunity
the
would come back
wideout who
around.
sealed the the block, drew the
But in the
double
back of his
coverage, or
mind,
pulled a
he knew
safety
the
out of
truth.
position.
In
Not a
this
frame
game,
of it made
there
the
are
cut.
no guarantees.
Then came the hip injury,
Only moments.
sharp, nagging,
And in the
kind
pros,
that
he'd
turns
soon
every
learn,
stride into a
even those
negotiation
moments
with
could
pain.
be stolen before you
Sitting
ever
out
saw
wasn't
them
an
coming.
option. In this
The
league,
cameras
absence
caught him
isn't
under the
recovery,
stadium lights,
it's replacement.
visor
So
gleaming,
he taped up,
shoulders squared,
gritted his teeth,
the crowd
and
a
played.
living wall of
Because
noise
here,
behind
survival comes before
him. It
glory.
looked cinematic,
But survival,
like a hero's
as he was
entrance.
about to learn, wasn't the
What the
same as
cameras
being
didn't
remembered.
show was the way his
The
pulse
camera
hammered,
finds him in slow motion,
how every step
arms
toward the
stretched,
line of
body
scrimmage
twisting
felt
midair,
like walking into a
fingertips
courtroom
clutching leather
where
just
every
before
movement would
crashing
be
to the
recorded,
turf.
replayed,
The scoreboard
and judged.
freezes for a moment, then
That
tilts
night,
in their favor.
he spent an
The
entire
crowd
quarter
erupts.
as a
The
ghost.
commentators call it what
Not
it is,
one
a
target,
game-winning catch.
not even a glance
What they
from the
don't show
quarterback.
is the 2 hours before
Still,
that moment,
every
warm-ups
snap was
under
full
glaring
speed.
lights, drills
Routes run
repeated
sharp
until his
enough
shirt
to
stuck
slice
to
the
his
turf,
skin, followed by
blocks thrown
58
with just
minutes
enough
of near
force to spring a
invisibility.
teammate.
Route after route run
Because
to
in the
perfection,
pros,
not
one
a single
lazy step
target.
can cost
Blocking
you your
defenders
job.
twice his size,
The
opening
contract
lanes
on
for
paper
teammates,
looked
all
impressive,
without his name being
but
called.
buried in the
2
fine
hours of
print
noise,
was the truth.
58 minutes of of silence
paycheck
for
was
2
chained to
seconds of
numbers,
glory, but those 2
receptions,
seconds, they were
yards,
enough. Enough to make
touchdowns.
the bruises worth it.
Numbers that
Enough to make
depended on
every
someone
lonely
else
rep on an
deciding
empty
he
field
mattered
at
that
dawn
play.
pay off.
A
Enough
game
to
without
remind him why he
targets
still
wasn't
walks
just
onto
a
the
quiet
grass
night.
even when no one's
It was
looking.
a financial
In
hit.
the locker room afterward,
And when
the
the
celebration
networks rolled
belongs
the
to everyone.
highlights, they
He
told
doesn't
the
need
same
the
old
spotlight.
story.
He knows that
The
football isn't
quarterback's
just highlights.
40-yard dime,
It's
the
discipline
running
when the
back's
ball never
breakaway
comes your
run,
way. It's teamwork
the
when your
wideout
block
who
means
sealed the
someone else
block,
scores.
drew the
It's
double
persistence
coverage,
when the only
or pulled a
stat you can
safety out
claim
of
is
position.
effort. And maybe
Not a
that's why
frame
his
of it
story
made the
doesn't
cut.
end with the roar of the stadium.
Then came the hip
Because
injury,
the real victory
sharp,
is quieter.
nagging,
Knowing
the
you
kind
did your
that turns
job.
every stride
Knowing you
into a
mattered,
negotiation
even
with
if no one
pain.
puts your face in the
Sitting
recap.
out wasn't an
To
option.
anyone working in the
In
shadows,
this league,
on the
absence
field,
isn't
in an
recovery.
office, anywhere,
It's replacement.
he'd tell you this: keep
So he
showing up.
taped up,
The moment
gritted his
you've been
teeth,
waiting for
and
may be
played.
2 seconds long, but it
Because
can change
here,
everything.
survival
And when
comes
the next
before
season
glory.
starts, he'll be there
But
again
survival,
because the
as he
game
was
never
about
stops,
to learn,
and neither does
wasn't
he.
the same as being remembered. The camera finds him in slow motion,